And so now we are very pleased indeed to introduce Maria Luciana Axente from PwC, a renowned speaker on the topic of AI ethics. Maria, a huge welcome. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and very pleased to be here and to be live with you wherever you are. And what a shame we couldn't meet in person, but by the looks of it, the festival was absolutely amazing. So many good sessions, I can't make out my mind which one is my favorite. And I'm really hoping that next year we'll be able to meet in person we'll have a different type of conference, right? So today we're going to be talking about what does it take to tame the intelligence machines? What does it mean to tame intelligence machine to start with? And as you can see from my first slide, you might know that I'm a little bit passionate about this domain of artificial intelligence and robotics, and I'm trying to present it in a way that's a little bit less intimidating and a little bit more personal, because ultimately we know this technology is here to stay. This technology is already making our lives better, sometimes not so much, as we're going to be seeing during my chat. So let's go and see what does it take to tame the intelligence machines. First of all, I would like to show you a snippet of the headlines we have seen over the last 2 or 3 years. You know, they keep on coming, especially in the last 18 months. We could see real cases where using algorithms and AI has actually not done the best things for the users and for the ones that were designed, from an bias recruitment tool to the algorithm that decided the A-level results to the use of facial recognition in so many different areas of lives, all the way to an unfortunately life loss in a self-driving incident. We see those events popping up more and more and more. And the question lies is like, what has gone wrong? Why do we have those examples? And what should we do about it? And examples keep on coming. Cards, social platforms again, justice, social services. So obviously the promises of AI are not the full story that we need to account for. There's obviously some strings attached, and we need to understand what those strings attached are. Probably the best way to describe what has happened with all those cases, rather than blaming the machine, and Adrian Joseph said yesterday in one of the sessions that in the case of the algorithm that decided the A-level results, there was a little bit of too much blaming on the technology itself. We should look a little bit deeper. The fact that even we design it right, it's not enough for us to achieve the good outcome. In many cases, the ones that I show you and the ones that have been heavily documented in studies, we are talking about sometimes an underuse, potentially a misuse, or even abuse of AI, which pose a major threat, not just to individuals and industries, but also society. And while this is something that the research world and the academic institution have widely documented and spoke about it, I think it's something that we need to start acknowledging more and more. It's not just about the promises and the benefits of AI. It's about the set of risks that this technology is bringing to us. In understanding more why AI is so exciting, my company, PwC, we've done a series of studies to understand not just the technology itself, which is exciting, and there's a lot of debate about the tech itself, but when you develop it, what type of impact it will have in terms of tangible benefit? Is it going to have a significant impact on consumption and productivity? And what are the exact bulk figures so that we can get a sense of what size of benefits we're talking here? And the study that we have conducted in 2017 gave us a huge figures, $15.7 trillion of financial impact of AI on the global economy in 2030. And while you might say we're only 9 years away and we haven't really seen this impact materialize, I think it's worth thinking that this figure depends on many different variables, and it's important. The figures is not as important per se, but the fact that AI can deliver real benefits and can help us improve a lot. And another thing that we have observed our study is that compared with other technologies, AI now starts to being piloted and even used in every single stage of the supply chain, from strategy to marketing to sales, which were domain that were probably at first look less likely, all the way to supply chain and HR. We have seen a lot of debates around use of AI in HR, recruitment, performance management, and so on and so forth. And while this is very exciting, especially in the industry for the C-suite and the leadership, we have to keep in mind that we are going through a difficult time that has changed forever who we are as individuals and how we consume goods and services, and also how we conduct our lives. And of course, we like to do studies to understand what's going on. We have conducted another one at the end of last year to understand what's the perception of the industry leaders on implementation of AI during the pandemic and post-pandemic. And some of the results we have found were very encouraging. The fact that more companies are looking to implement AI. It was actually quite a significant change from 47% who didn't use AI to 5% this year is a big jump. That says very clearly that the business leaders have understood the potential of AI and they're ready to place not their bets, to actually invest in it and take it to the next level. But there are still some concerns with adoption when it comes to reliability and performance over time, which says what we have been hoping for, that the leaders actually understand as much more at stake than the benefits. There are a series of risks they need to be considering. So what I wanted to share with you is some of what we think the golden rules that will allow us to design and use AI intelligence machine that will benefit us as individuals and society. And while they sound pretty funny, you will see that it's quite a bit of business insight we put behind it. First of all, the most surprising, which everyone seems to be jumping or overlooking, is know what AI are you using. First of all, what AI is for you, for your organization, and where you're using it. We have countless engagements where our clients were not so sure what sort of AI application they were doing. And the first things that we have done with them was to actually try to catalog those applications and categorize them in AI and non-AI application and allow them to create a definition of AI that they could share widely so that we see where we draw the line. And while there are multiple solutions that could or could not be cataloged AI, being clear about what is AI for you will help promote the AI agenda and actually be able to get some sustainable results with the enterprise. The second important rule is to understand that AI is a massive disruptor in the enterprise, and the fact that the governance of AI is as a novelty. In the past, with previous technology, we did not have to worry about an operating model for a technology or a group of technology per se. But AI is changing the game altogether. It's not just about the application level where we need to pay attention and we need to have a better understanding of the roles and responsibilities and be able to decide how to best deploy AI, because to a certain extent, we don't have yet an AI development process as we have had in the past with previous technologies. Is neither agile, neither crisp, neither waterfall. So we still have a bit of standardization that needs to happen at application level. But because AI uses so much data that is part of a historical context and present context, it tends to reflect realities that otherwise were not obvious. So we are saying that you need to have a toolkit, a toolbox that it's not only applicable application level, but it goes deep into the operation of your business. It looks at how well you align AI with the strategic goals. As I showed earlier, yes, AI can help us improve the economic performance as long as is aligned with a very clear purpose. It's the same with ecosystems. So, for example, the one area that is ignored at the moment from the conversation of AI, it's the procurement. The fact that AI procurement is another way of acquiring AI and using it in the enterprise. But sometimes, and most of the cases, the procurement specialists are not ready to understand the complexity of AI and what all the implication and how to best perform a technical due diligence and ethical due diligence on that solution and see how well, for example, a third-party solution will align with one organization goals, but also ethical principles. The third golden rule is about the team that is behind building AI or using AI. And while there was a lot of conversation on the technical skills that are required, data scientists, engineers, all sorts, strategists and interpreter, the one domain that needs to be given a seat at the table is the ethicists, because the ethicists are the ones that are helping us elicit the moral question, the normative questions in relation with this technology. We haven't been in this context before, so we need to go through this process in understanding, is it okay for us to go ahead and build this technology, and what are the implications, what could be the harm, what could be the impact on the current risk of the enterprise. But furthermore, AI requires a more rounded approach from an expertise perspective. So beyond the technical team, the hands-on technical team, we will have to consult with legal experts, with social scientists, but very important, with human scientists, the ones who understand the human behavior, the ones who have studied the behavior of humans in relation to machines and how that has improved or had a negative impact on the well-being of people. But that will not work, this new setup, change in setup, how you build AI, if we don't empower our people to understand that now is the time for our responsibilities to become very personal. And the fact that it's extended, meaning that if you're a data scientist and you are crunching personal data, you should ultimately have the same duty of care as the doctors have, and be able to understand that the numbers on the screens are not just numbers you're crunching. It is about people. The numbers are about the people's life. And we have to be able to work with our technical teams to distill this type of behavior and also incentivize this behavior, so that when we are in a position to assess the impact and the harms, we have not just one person that does this job. It's everyone in the team that considers the implication, and they manifest their responsibility accordingly. The fourth one is about the risk of AI, and I still feel that we don't talk enough about what can go wrong with AI. The fact that on top of the existing risk every organization in every sector has, and we have heard from our CEOs that they are convinced, 85% of them, they are convinced that AI will change the way the business is being run, including the risk of the enterprise. AI comes with a new set of risks, and whether we're talking about risks of bias, as we've seen with many of the examples previously, or security, or lack of governance or transparency. We have a set of national risks that come to the extent that when you start scaling AI and having the critical mass, we start potentially see risk associated with job displacement in certain areas with winner take it all and concentration of power. But as we have seen with the conversation we've had around the social platforms, the potential for surveillance, misinformation, and manipulation. And while those are risks that we are ill prepared, and in most cases, we will see more examples like this going forward, but we shouldn't be afraid, or we shouldn't postpone using or adopting AI. I think the best way to approach it is to build an organizational resilience, as we have done it with cyber, as we are preparing teams for any type of crisis. This type of approach or mindset should exist with the way we build AI. And even if something will go wrong, and there's the potential in many cases for this to go either because it's a technical problem or misuse of it, it's okay to a certain extent as long as we are able to control it, and maybe may be able to fix it as long as we understand where are the entry points for error and where do we need to go back and to apply a solution. And the last golden rule, of course, is linked to my favorite subject at all, which is the values, the ethics, right? The subject has been in conversation a lot in the last 2 years alone. And the fact that ultimately we're talking about a technology that has agency, that adapts to its external environment, is autonomous for human intervention, but also interacts with its environment. As a result, we need to be careful with the values that we're incorporating in those machines, because ultimately, if we don't do anything, as was the case with many solutions that we have had there, it doesn't mean that values are not incorporated, but we ended up embedding the values of the creators, of the builders. And, we know AI industry has a huge problem. Less than 80% of the experts in the AI field are women. And because of that, and because there's a lack of education at data science level, we risk implicitly encoding the values of white 20-something men that do not represent the values of the wider society. And when we are thinking about doing this, well, there's a lot of good work that will happen at application level, technical solution to detect and address bias, for explainability, both local and global. It's worth considering that there's just one intervention point. We need to go again outside the application built or purchasing into the organization itself, and make sure that the team that we put around the project have a higher degree of diversity, and not just diversity, but inclusivity, because it's not enough to have women at the table if they do not have an equal share in the decisions that are being made by AI. And while embedding the right values in AI is a challenging task because of so many different reasons. First, the values are so different and contextual driven, and every culture and subculture organization would have their own values that need to be contextualized and understood when we do this journey. It's the only way for us to make sure that when we release in the wild a beast that adapts to its environment, it's the values and the moral laws of that context are reflected as much as possible in that application. Because ultimately, what we need to be doing to ensure that the machines are tamed and the machines are behaving according to human goals and needs, we need to be reverting from or changing the current computer science philosophy, the ones that had got us the Silicon Valley where Silicon Valley is can we build it? This is the question that most of engineers and computer scientists are asking. Can we build it? And because we can, we'll go ahead and build it. To something that is in fact a little bit different. It's changing a verb, but that verb is fundamental to the way those autonomous and intelligence machines should be built. In fact, the philosophy of computer science should be: should we build it just because we can? We shouldn't ignore the fact that our implication well beyond our immediate visibility and reach, and we need to be able to consider, to train ourselves and change our mindset to really consider the long-term implication and go deep and far, further than we haven't been before with other technologies, and being able to incorporate mitigation actions, whatever harms may occur, but stop altogether the technologies we can't understand fully. And we see more harms than benefits. And it's the case of facial recognition technology that was banned widely across the US, and many tech companies have placed a ban, a moratorium. So this type of approach is something that indicates us that a new philosophy in computer science is needed. And that should allow us to function together and to be much more efficient when we consider embedding values in AI with the view of changing them. And while there's a lot that can be said about the ethics of AI, and there is many useful conversations that happen out there, UK is in a very good position and has a very bubbling community and public policy sector. This is what I would want to leave you with, is the fact that sometimes working in AI ethics means to challenge the status quo, and requires to develop a sense of bravery and decisiveness, and be able to refuse the unacceptable and push for the change, because we have a window of opportunity to get things right. Thank you very much.
Maria, thank you so much. That was a fantastic talk. Thank you. We've had lots of kind of questions coming in, both on the chat, but also peripheral to the platform as well. I'd like to kick off with a question from our lead researcher here at BT, Detlef Nauck, who mentioned that you spoke about governing across the AI lifecycle, where he doesn't think maybe organisations are quite stood up yet for that process. And he's wondering, have you seen any successful approaches to governing AI already? And on the back of that, have you got any advice that you would give to companies that are starting their journey in terms of applying AI to their business?
That's an excellent question, and thank you, Detlef. Looking forward to our fire chat later. I would be a bit cautious about successful stories, because we're still very early on. I would say that financial services is the most mature industry in understanding the use of AI, and we have been working. Some of my projects were in financial services, helping clients, on one hand, updating their risk profile to include new related risks, but also being able to create a target operating model for AI, a virtual operating model for AI, which is very difficult. One of the challenges someone like financial services has, and the reason I mentioned them is because obviously they had the benefit of using AI at scale for the last 25 years, odd years, is the siloed approach to technology. The fact that traditionally, AI or technology will sit in the realm of CTOs and CIOs, but they haven't had to consult much with other business functions as AI is pushing us. And ultimately, the governance of AI ends up to be an operational problem and a strategic one. And we have experienced ourselves in PwC when we created our Center of Excellence, but ultimately, we have to put the tech aside a little bit and consider the operational implication and how to best organize ourselves to be able to accommodate development of AI. On the other hand, I've seen quite a bit of progress in terms of managing responsible AI in tech companies, and without trying to promote one of the tech companies or another, I think Microsoft are doing a fantastic work. They set up an office for responsible AI, and they have been looking to bring together all those different organizational entities with the view of creating what we just demonstrate, the target operating model for AI. And to the second question, what the company should be doing is acknowledge that it's much more than technology. AI brings a lot of organizational and strategic issues, and they have to bring together those who are in charge of the business operations to be able to define or redesign the organization to be able to allow AI to flourish.
And that feels to me, Maria, that basically what you're saying is it's got to be embedded right across the organisation. It's, it won't be successful if it's just trying to be governed in one particular area. And I felt that when you were talking about the roles involved as well, something that really struck me. You had the slide with all, data scientists and right down to the ethics advisor, effectively at the bottom of your stack. Do you feel that essentially what we are going to need to engender in our organisations is a team that are all across ethics? So, in fact, everybody involved in that chain is going to need to be expert to some degree in ethics.
That's a phenomenal, amazing question, Lisa. So thank you for asking. Yes, they are in the age of AI, everyone is in AI ethics. That's the reality, and we need them to. We need them to understand that even data scientists, not only that there's some implication of the work they're doing, but when we talk about embedding ethics, ultimately we go at technical level. And we will need them to understand how to best do it, because there are many techniques out there, there are many options, and they need to be educated to understand that. On the other hand, we still need an ethicist, because ultimately the ethicist has an important role, as has happened with bioethics or business ethics.
Yeah.
We are in situation that we haven't been before, and there's a certain process for us to understand the moral implications. Should we do it? How should we do it? What sort of benefits and risk we are signing up for? So what the ethicist can help with is actually answer those moral questions, help with ethical reasoning, and steer the whole team with this thinking. It's not going to be easy because, as I said, we haven't trained our computer scientists to think about those issues. So for the first period, the ethicist will be also the go-to person, the ones that will be the agent of change and empower the people in the team to do this type of work. Yeah. And I can't say it enough. Those ethicists, they have to be philosophical trained. You can't just assume that anyone who reads a report is going to become an ethicist. No. We haven't done it with bioethicists, right? Back in the day. So why should we do it now?
Yeah, and there's going to be that transitory period as we progress to an environment where everybody will have that kind of capability. Darren, you had a question.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thanks, Maria. And I loved the bit where you talked about moving from the could we build it to should we build it. And I guess there's a feeling that AI can ultimately do anything. So for the organisations listening in today who are just sort of broaching this subject, is there any advice as to what areas should almost be avoided? Have you seen any real failures happen? And where should people, try not to focus?
That's a very good question. And while the use cases I show you, and there are many other repositories that document the failings of AI, they spread across multiple functional areas and industries. So ultimately, it's not necessarily about an area. We've already agreed that technologies like facial recognition, especially in some of the areas, are a no-go. Even application of use of algorithms in grading students is a no-go because we still are not able to govern it right. So what I would say to organization listening out there is to be honest about your internal understanding and knowledge, first of all, not just on what the problems you're trying to solve, but how well you understand this technology. Because sometimes we take for granted, we think that there's a higher understanding of AI, but the reality is many companies, the vast majority, they don't understand it. It's ultimately a rocket science company, technology that requires a certain stack, a certain foundation. And if you don't have the foundation, and if you are a business that is more than 20 years old, 25 at least, as the big tech companies, you will have a certain legacy you have to pay attention. So ultimately, it's about balancing cautiousness with jumping into opportunity. But when companies are considering in going to AI, they have to have a bit of a reality check and understanding what exactly is AI they're trying to use, what's the use case, and how to best do it, build versus acquired, so that ultimately delivers an ROI. The biggest risk we have right now is a continued hyperization of AI, where it's being misused, and for business executives not to see the results they're hoping for.
Maria, we could talk forever. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. But so thank you ever so much for that chat. And I know you're going to join us actually again in 10 minutes with Detlef and Stephen Metcalf. So thank you for now. Guys in the audience, so we're breaking now for 10 minutes for another challenge. Go on, have a go. And yes, you'll see Maria, as I say, with Detlef and Stephen Metcalf, MP, at 12 o'clock for a fireside chat. So please join that session.